The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who made Carter Newman sign 3 separate documents before handing over the thick cream-colored paper that would change everything he thought he knew about his family. Carter stood in his corner office on the 42nd floor of the Newman Pharmaceuticals building in Manhattan, staring at words that made no sense. His uncle Edmund, a man he had met exactly twice in his 31 years, had died and left him a winery. Not stock options, not a beach house in the Hamptons, but an actual working winery in some place called Meadowbrook, California. Population 812, according to the quick search Carter did on his phone. "You cannot be serious," Carter muttered, reading through the legal documents again. The place was called Westridge Vineyards, and apparently it had been in operation for 43 years. His uncle had run it successfully until his death 3 weeks ago. The lawyer's letter mentioned something about a vineyard manager who had kept operations running smoothly and would need to be consulted about the transition. Carter's assistant knocked on the glass door. "Your 2 o'clock is here." He waved her away. "Cancel it." "Cancel everything for the rest of the week." She blinked. "Everything. I need to go to California." 24 hours later, Carter pulled his rental Mercedes onto a narrow road that wound through endless rows of grapevines. The late October sun cast golden light across the valley, and despite his irritation at this entire situation, he had to admit the scenery was stunning. Rolling hills stretched in every direction, covered in vines that were turning autumn shades of red and gold. The main building appeared around a curve, a beautiful stone structure with a Spanish tile roof that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. Carter parked near the entrance and climbed out, his Italian leather shoes crunching on the gravel. He was still wearing his suit from the flight, though he had loosened his tie somewhere over Nevada. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the tasting room had exposed wooden beams, stone walls, and a long mahogany bar that gleamed in the afternoon light. Bottles of wine lined the shelves behind it, their labels elegant and simple. Everything was immaculate. "We are closed," a voice called from somewhere in the back. A woman's voice, clear and firm. "I am not here to taste wine," Carter replied, walking toward the sound. "I am looking for the vineyard manager." "That would be me." She emerged from a storage room carrying a case of wine bottles like it weighed nothing. She was probably in her late 20s, with dark honey-colored hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes the color of amber in sunlight. She wore jeans, work boots, and a faded blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. No makeup that Carter could see, and she did not need any. She set down the case and wiped her hands on her jeans, studying him with an expression that was not particularly welcoming. "Let me guess. You are Carter Newman." "I am. Olivia James." She did not offer her hand. "Your uncle mentioned you a few times, said you ran some big company in New York and would not know a Pinot Noir from a Chardonnay." Carter felt his jaw tighten. "My uncle barely knew me. He knew enough." Olivia crossed her arms. "So what brings you all the way out here? Come to see what you inherited before you sell it off to some corporate conglomerate." "I have not decided what I am doing with the property yet." "Property?" She said the word like it tasted bitter. "This is not just property. This is Westridge Vineyards. Your uncle spent 4 decades building this place from nothing. We produce some of the finest wines in the region. We have won awards. We have loyal customers who have been coming here for years." "I am sure it is all very impressive," Carter said, his tone clipped. "But I run a pharmaceutical company worth $800 million. I do not have time to manage a winery in the middle of nowhere." Olivia's eyes flashed. "Then why are you here?" "Because apparently I own it, and I need to figure out what to do with it." "Well, here is an idea. Leave it to the people who actually care about it. Your uncle had a clause in his will. Did you bother to read the whole thing? Carter pulled out his phone and scrolled through the PDF his lawyer had sent. He had skimmed it on the plane. What clause? The one that says the vineyard manager has the right to remain in her position for a minimum of 2 years following his death, with guaranteed salary and housing, regardless of ownership transfer. Carter read through the document more carefully. There it was, in legal language that basically meant what Olivia had just said. His uncle had protected her position. You live here? Carter asked. In the cottage behind the main building. I have been here for 7 years. Started as a harvest worker when I was 22, worked my way up. Your uncle taught me everything about winemaking. He trusted me to run this place. If you have been running it, then why did it not go to you in the will? Something flickered across Olivia's face. He tried, but the property has been in the Newman family for 2 generations. He had some old-fashioned ideas about keeping it in the bloodline. Plus, there are financial considerations I could not have handled. Inheriting a winery means inheriting debt, taxes, operational costs. Your uncle knew I did not have that kind of money. Carter walked over to the window, looking out at the vineyard. The sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. So what exactly do you do here? Everything. I manage the vineyard operations, oversee the harvest, handle the winemaking process from grape to bottle. I do the books, manage our small staff, coordinate with distributors, run the tasting room on weekends. Your uncle handled more of the business side in his last few years, and I focused on the wine itself, but I know every aspect of this operation. And you think you can keep doing that? I know I can. The question is whether you are going to let me. Carter turned to face her. She stood with her shoulders back, chin lifted, meeting his gaze without flinching. There was dirt under her fingernails and a small stain on her shirt that might have been wine or grape juice. She looked nothing like the polished professionals he dealt with in New York, and yet there was something compelling about her certainty, her passion. I need to see the financial records, he said. All of them. Tax documents, operating costs, revenue, everything. Fine. I will have them ready for you tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning I will be on a plane back to New York. Then I guess you are not that interested in what you inherited. Olivia walked past him toward the door. Your uncle's office is upstairs, first door on the right. I had it cleaned after he passed, but everything is still in there. The cottage guest room is made up if you want to stay the night instead of driving back to whatever hotel you booked in the city. I did not book a hotel. I was planning to fly back tonight. Last flight to New York leaves San Francisco at 9. It is almost 5 now and you are 90 minutes from the airport. You do the math. She paused at the door. Cottage is the stone building behind this one. I will make sure the guest room light is on. She left before Carter could respond. He stood alone in the tasting room as the sun sank lower, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. This was not how he had planned his day. He was supposed to fly out, meet with the lawyer, sign whatever papers were needed to put the property up for sale and be back in New York by the weekend. Simple, clean, efficient. Instead, he was stuck in wine country with a woman who looked at him like he was the enemy, and a property he did not want but apparently could not easily unload. Carter climbed the stairs to his uncle's office. It was a comfortable room with a large desk, filing cabinets, and walls covered in photos. Edmund at various stages of his life, always in the vineyard. Edmund with workers at harvest time. Edmund holding up award certificates. Edmund laughing with a younger Olivia, both of them covered in grape juice. Carter sat down at the desk and opened the first filing cabinet. If he was going to make an informed decision, he needed information. 3 hours later, his eyes were burning and his stomach was growling, but he had a much clearer picture of Westridge Vineyards. The operation was profitable, though not extravagantly so. His uncle had reinvested most of the earnings back into the business, upgrading equipment, expanding the tasting room, improving the quality of the wine. The vineyard had won several regional awards in the past 5 years. Customer reviews were glowing. The books were meticulous. Olivia James knew what she was doing. A knock on the doorframe made Carter look up. Olivia stood there with a plate in each hand. "I figured you had not eaten, made extra." The smell hit him. Roasted chicken, herbs, something warm and homemade. His stomach reminded him that his last meal had been a sad airport sandwich 12 hours ago. "You did not have to do that," Carter said. "I know." She set one plate on the desk. "But your uncle would have wanted me to." He always said Newman hospitality was important, even if the Newman in question is only here to sell the place out from under us. "I have not made any decisions." "Sure." She turned to leave. "Wait." Carter stood up. "Sit, please. If we are going to have to work together for the next 2 years, we should probably try to be civil." Olivia hesitated, then sat in the chair across from the desk. Carter sat back down and they ate in silence for a moment. The food was excellent, seasoned perfectly, the kind of meal someone made who actually cared about cooking. "This is really good," Carter admitted. "Thanks. I like cooking. It is relaxing after a day in the vineyard. How did you end up here?" "Meadowbrook does not exactly seem like a place people stumble into." Olivia set down her fork. "I grew up in Sacramento. Parents wanted me to go into nursing or teaching, something practical. I studied agriculture at UC Davis instead, focused on viticulture. Came out here for a summer job after my sophomore year, and fell in love with the whole process. The way you can take something as simple as a grape and turn it into something complex and beautiful. Your uncle took a chance on me when I was just a kid who barely knew which end of a shovel to hold. He taught me everything. He must have seen something in you. He said I reminded him of himself when he was young, someone who cared more about the work than the money." She met Carter's eyes. He also said his nephew was the opposite, all business, no passion. Carter felt heat rise in his chest. "He did not know me." "Then prove him wrong. Stay for a few days. Let me show you what this place really is before you make up your mind. I have a company to run." "You have a company that has been running fine without you for the past day and a half." "I looked you up. Newman Pharmaceuticals has a solid executive team. You are the CEO, but you are not the only person keeping the lights on." Carter should have been annoyed by her presumption, but instead he found himself almost wanting to smile. "You researched me." "I research everyone who might have power over my future. Your company develops medications for rare diseases. You took over from your father 5 years ago and have increased revenue by 30%. You work 80-hour weeks and have not taken a vacation in 3 years. You have a reputation for being brilliant and ruthless." She tilted her head. "Am I close?" "Uncomfortably, so take a few days. Consider it a forced vacation. Let me show you what your uncle built, then make your decision." Carter looked at her across the desk, this woman who spoke with such certainty about things he did not understand. Wine and soil and seasons. There was something magnetic about her conviction, the way she fought for what mattered to her. 3 days, he heard himself say. "I will stay for 3 days. Then I need to get back to New York." Olivia's face transformed when she smiled. It was like watching the sun come out from behind clouds. 3 days. I can work with that." The cottage guest room was simple but comfortable. Clean white linens, a wooden dresser, a window that looked out over the vineyard. Carter had stayed in 5-star hotels all over the world, but there was something peaceful about this small room that made him sleep better than he had in months. He woke to the sound of voices outside. Morning light streamed through the window. Carter checked his phone. 6:30. Back in New York, he would already be at his desk. He dressed in jeans and a casual shirt, the most informal clothes he had brought. When he stepped outside, he found Olivia talking with two men near a pickup truck loaded with equipment. She saw Carter and waved him over. "This is Miguel and his son, David. They handle a lot of our field work. Guys, this is Carter Newman, Edmund's nephew." Miguel was probably in his 50s, with weathered hands and a kind face. David looked to be in his early 20s. Both shook Carter's hand with firm grips. "Your uncle was a good man," Miguel said. "He gave me a job when I needed one, treated me like family." "That seems to be a common theme," Carter replied, glancing at Olivia. "We are about to do some work in the north section," Olivia said. "Post-harvest cleanup, checking the vines before winter dormancy. Want to come along?" Carter had conference calls to reschedule and emails piling up, but he found himself nodding. "Sure." They piled into the truck, and David drove them out to the northern edge of the property. The morning air was crisp and cool, smelling of earth and dried leaves. Olivia explained as they walked between the rows of vines, pointing out details Carter would never have noticed on his own. "These are Cabernet Sauvignon vines. They have been here for 23 years. Grapevines can live for over 100 years if you take care of them properly. Each vine is different like people. Some produce more fruit, some produce better quality. You learn to read them." She stopped by one vine and ran her hand along the thick, gnarled trunk. "Your grandfather planted the original vines here in 1983. Your uncle expanded over the years, but he always maintained that original section, said it was the heart of the vineyard." "I did not know my grandfather," Carter said. "He and my father had some kind of falling out. We never talked about this side of the family." Edmund mentioned that. "Said your father thought winemaking was beneath the Newman name, wanted something more prestigious. My father built a pharmaceutical empire. And Edmund built this." Olivia gestured at the vineyard spreading around them. "Different kinds of empires. They worked for hours." Carter learned how to check vines for disease, how to identify which canes needed to be pruned, how to read the soil for nutrients and drainage. It was physical work, and by noon his back ached and his hands were dirty, but there was something satisfying about it. Something real. They broke for lunch in the shade of an old oak tree at the edge of the vineyard. Olivia had packed sandwiches and bottles of water. Miguel and David talked about their families, their lives in Meadowbrook. It was so different from Carter's usual lunch meetings in sterile conference rooms, discussing quarterly projections and market strategies. "What do you think so far?" Olivia asked quietly while Miguel told a story that had David laughing. "It is different than I expected," Carter admitted. "Different good or different bad, just different. I am used to controlling everything from behind a desk. This is messier, more complicated. Wine is alive. You cannot control it the way you control a spreadsheet. You can guide it, nurture it, but in the end, you are working with nature. Some years are perfect. Some years are challenging. You adapt." "That sounds incredibly inefficient." "It is. It is also beautiful." She took a drink of water. "Your uncle used to say that pharmaceutical companies and wineries were not that different. Both trying to create something that makes people's lives better. Medicine heals the body. Good wine heals the soul." "That sounds like something that would be on a motivational poster." Olivia laughed. "Yeah, Edmund could be a little corny sometimes, but he meant it. He loved what he did." Every single day, Carter thought about his own work. He loved the challenge of it, the strategy and the success. But did he love it the way Olivia described? the way his uncle apparently had. That afternoon, Olivia took him to the fermentation room where they stored the wine during the aging process. Rows of oak barrels lined the walls, each marked with dates and grape varieties. "This is last year's Pinot Noir," Olivia said, using a special tool to extract a small sample from one barrel. She poured it into a glass and handed it to Carter. "Tell me what you taste." Carter sipped. He was not a wine expert by any stretch, but even he could tell this was good. "It is smooth. Kind of earthy, cherries maybe. Very good." The earthiness comes from the terroir, the specific characteristics of our soil and climate. The cherry notes are classic Pinot. This vintage is going to be excellent. You can tell that now. You learn to predict. It is part science, part experience, part intuition. She poured herself a small sample and tasted it, her expression thoughtful. "Edmund and I used to spend hours in here, tasting and discussing. He taught me to trust my palate, to not be swayed by what wine critics or trends said I should be making. Make what feels right, he would say. Make what you would want to drink." Sounds like he was a good teacher. The best. Olivia's voice softened. "I miss him. Every day. He was like a father to me, more than my own dad ever was." Carter felt something twist in his chest. Guilt, maybe, that this man who had meant so much to Olivia was a stranger to him. They shared blood, but Olivia had known Edmund in ways Carter never would. They spent the rest of the afternoon going through the business side of operations. Olivia showed him the distribution network, the relationships with restaurants and wine shops, the growing online sales platform. She was sharp and organized, answering every question Carter threw at her without hesitation. "You really do run this whole operation," Carter said as they finished reviewing the third-quarter revenue reports. "I told you I did. Did you think I was exaggerating?" "I thought you might be overstating your role. I was wrong." That almost sounded like an apology. It was an acknowledgement of competence. "I do not apologize often." "I bet you do not." Olivia closed her laptop. "Dinner is in an hour if you are hungry. I am making pasta." "You do not have to keep feeding me." "I know. But I am cooking anyway, and it seems silly for you to drive into town when there is food here." They ate dinner on the cottage patio as the sun set over the vineyard. Olivia had made homemade fettuccine with a wine sauce that was incredible. They talked about everything except the winery. Carter found himself telling her about growing up in Manhattan, the pressure of taking over his father's company, the expectations that had shaped his entire life. "You like it?" Olivia asked. "Running the company. I am good at it." "That is not what I asked." Carter considered the question. "I like the challenge. I like building something, making it grow, but sometimes I wonder if I chose it or if it was just the path laid out for me. You could always walk away. And do what? This is my family's legacy." "So is this," Olivia said, gesturing at the vineyard. "But you are ready to sell it. That is different." "Is it? You are keeping one legacy and abandoning another. Seems like you are making a choice either way." Carter did not have a good answer for that. The next day, Olivia woke him before dawn. "Come on. You need to see this." They drove to the highest point on the property, where an old bench sat overlooking the entire vineyard. The sky was just starting to lighten, stars still visible in the west. "Edmund and I used to come up here during harvest," Olivia said softly. "He said you could never really understand the vineyard unless you watched it wake up." They sat in silence as the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The vineyard emerged from shadow, rows of vines stretching across the hills in perfect symmetry. Mist hung in the valleys, giving everything a dreamlike quality. Carter found he could not look away. There was something primal and beautiful about watching dawn break over this land his grandfather had cultivated, his uncle had loved, and this woman beside him tended with such devotion. I see why he loved it, Carter said quietly. Yeah. Olivia's voice was thick. Me too. They spent the second day in town. Olivia introduced Carter to the people who made up the community around Westridge Vineyards, the restaurant owner who featured their wines on his list, the couple who ran the local market and sold their bottles to tourists, the farmers who shared equipment and labor during harvest season. Everyone had a story about Edmund, how he had helped someone in a tough time, or shared his expertise, or simply been a good neighbor. Carter realized his uncle had not just built a business. He had woven himself into the fabric of this place. Your uncle was the reason my restaurant survived the recession, said Marcus, who owned the nicest bistro in town. When business was slow, he would recommend us to every visitor who came through his tasting room. Sent us so much business we could keep our doors open. I owe him everything. After dinner at Marcus's restaurant, Carter and Olivia walked through the small downtown. It was charming in a way that felt like stepping back in time. Old-fashioned streetlights, a movie theater with a marquee, shops with hand-painted signs. It is not Manhattan, Olivia said, but it is home. It is nice, Carter admitted. Quiet. Too quiet for you. I do not know. I have never lived anywhere quiet. They stopped in front of a shop window displaying local artwork. Olivia's reflection was visible in the glass beside his own. Carter noticed for the first time how when she smiled, a small dimple appeared in her left cheek, how her eyes crinkled at the corners when she laughed, how she pushed her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. What? Olivia asked, catching him staring. Nothing, just thinking. About whether to sell the vineyard, among other things. They walked back to the car in comfortable silence. Carter found himself not wanting the evening to end, which was strange. He was not someone who usually enjoyed aimless wandering or small talk. But with Olivia, it did not feel aimless. Every conversation revealed something new, some layer he had not noticed before. On the third day, Olivia taught Carter how to actually taste wine properly. They sat in the tasting room with glasses of 5 different varieties spread before them. You cannot just drink it, she explained. You have to engage all your senses. Look at the color first. Hold it up to the light. What do you see? Carter held up the glass of red wine. It is dark, kind of purple. Good, that tells you it is young, probably bold. Now smell it. Do not just take a quick sniff. Really breathe it in, he did. Berries, something spicy. Is that pepper? Yes, you are getting it. Now taste it, but do not swallow right away. Let it sit on your tongue. Notice how the flavor changes. They went through all 5 wines, Olivia guiding him through each one. Carter was surprised by how much he could detect once he knew what to look for. The subtle differences between varietals, the influence of oak aging, the balance of tannins and acidity. You have a good palate, Olivia said. Better than most beginners. I have a good teacher. Their eyes met across the bar. Something passed between them, a current of awareness that made Carter's breath catch. Olivia looked away first, a flush rising in her cheeks. We should talk about what happens next, she said, her voice more businesslike. Your 3 days are almost up. They are. So what are you going to do? Carter stood and walked to the window. Outside, workers were moving through the vineyard, doing the daily tasks that kept this place running. Beyond them, the hills rolled away into the distance, covered in vines that had been here longer than he had been alive. I honestly do not know, he said. A week ago, the answer would have been simple. Sell it, take the money, get back to my real life. But now I am not sure what my real life is supposed to be. Olivia came to stand beside him. She smelled like grapes and sunshine and something floral he could not quite place. Edmund put you in his will for a reason. He could have left the place to anyone or sold it himself before he died, but he left it to you. His sister's son. Family. Family he barely knew. Maybe he hoped you would get to know it through this place. Get to know him. She paused. Get to know yourself. Carter turned to face her. What do you want me to do, Olivia? Tell me honestly. I want you to keep it. I want you to let me continue running it the way Edmund and I planned. We had goals, expansions we wanted to try. New varietals to plant. I want to keep his dream alive. And if I sell, then whoever buys it will probably bring in their own people. I will have 2 years, but after that I will be gone. And Westridge Vineyards will just become another property in someone's portfolio. It will stop being special. It seems special to you because you love it. It is special because people loved it. Edmund loved it. I love it. The people in this town love it. She met his eyes. Maybe you could love it too if you gave it a chance. Carter's phone buzzed. A text from his CFO about a meeting he was missing. Reality calling him back. He had a company to run, responsibilities, a life that did not involve dirt under his fingernails and sunsets over vineyards. But when he looked at Olivia, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time, something that scared him more than any business decision ever had. I need to go back to New York, Carter said, but I am not making any decisions yet. Give me a couple of weeks to think about everything. Disappointment flickered across Olivia's face, but she nodded. Okay, thank you for staying the 3 days. I know it was not what you planned. No, it was not, but I am glad I did. He should have left then, should have gotten in the rental car and driven to the airport. Instead, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Olivia's ear, his fingers brushing her cheek. I will call you, he said softly. Okay. They stood there for a moment longer, and Carter had the overwhelming urge to kiss her. But he did not. He could not. This was already complicated enough. Back in New York, Carter could not focus. He sat through meetings without retaining half of what was said. He reviewed reports and had to read them 3 times. At night, he lay awake thinking about California sunshine and a woman with amber eyes who talked about wine like it was poetry. His assistant noticed. Are you feeling all right? You seem distracted. I am fine, Carter lied, but he was not fine. He could not stop thinking about the vineyard, about the community that had grown around it, about the passion in Olivia's voice when she talked about her work. Most of all, he could not stop thinking about how alive he had felt during those 3 days. How the work had tired his body but energized his mind in ways his corporate job never did. After a week of barely sleeping, Carter called Olivia. It was late in New York, but only evening in California. Hello. Her voice sent a jolt through him. It is Carter. I know. I have caller ID. He could hear the smile in her voice. How is New York? Cold, gray. How is the vineyard? Beautiful. We had our first frost last night. The vines are going dormant for winter. That sounds peaceful. It is. I miss having someone to share it with, though. Carter's heart beat faster. Olivia, I have been thinking that sounds dangerous. I am serious. I have been thinking about what you said, about legacies and choices, about what my uncle might have wanted. And I want to come back, not just for a visit. I want to spend real time there. A month, maybe longer. I need to understand the business fully before I make a final decision. A month, Olivia's voice rose with hope. You can take a month away from your company. I have a strong executive team, and I can work remotely. It is not ideal, but I need to do this. When? Next week. I will fly out Monday. Carter, I thank you. This means everything. After they hung up, Carter sat in his dark apartment, looking out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. He was making a decision that went against every logical instinct he had. Taking a month away from his company to work at a winery he still might sell. Spending time with a woman who made him feel things he had carefully avoided for years. It was impulsive and emotional and completely unlike him. He could not wait. Carter arrived back at Westridge Vineyards on a Monday afternoon in early November. Olivia met him in the driveway, and the smile on her face made the entire cross-country flight worth it. "You came back," she said. "I said I would. People say a lot of things." They stood there grinning at each other until Miguel drove past on a tractor and honked, making them both laugh. Carter settled back into the cottage guest room. This time he had brought casual clothes, work boots, and his laptop. He set up a makeshift office in the cottage's small dining room and arranged his schedule to handle the most critical business in the mornings, leaving afternoons free for the vineyard. The first week fell into a rhythm. Carter worked through conference calls and reports until noon, then joined Olivia in whatever work the vineyard required. November was the quiet season, a time for maintenance and planning. "This is when we do all the work people do not see," Olivia explained. "Pruning, repairing trellises, analyzing the harvest data to make decisions for next year. It is not glamorous, but it is necessary." Carter found he enjoyed the balance. His mind stayed sharp handling pharmaceutical business in the mornings, then he could stretch his muscles and breathe fresh air in the afternoons. It was the best of both worlds. In the evenings, he and Olivia cooked dinner together. She taught him her recipes, family dishes passed down from her grandmother mixed with things she had learned from Edmund. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. He learned she had a younger brother in the Navy, that her favorite color was the exact shade of gold the vineyard turned at sunset, that she sang off-key in the shower and could quote entire scenes from old movies. She learned he had been engaged once, 5 years ago, to a woman who worked in finance. They had broken up because neither of them could compromise on whose career took priority. "You regret it?" Olivia asked. "No, we wanted different things. She is married now, has a kid. We were not right for each other." "What would be right?" Carter looked at her across the kitchen table. "I am starting to figure that out." The sexual tension between them built slowly, like a fire starting from embers, a brush of hands when passing dishes. The way Olivia's laugh made Carter's chest tighten, how she caught him staring and held his gaze instead of looking away. They were both adults. Both single. Both clearly attracted to each other. But neither made a move, as if acknowledging it out loud would break the spell. In the third week, they drove to a neighboring winery for a regional vintners association meeting. Olivia introduced Carter to other winery owners, people who had known Edmund and were curious about the nephew who had inherited Westridge. "Are you keeping it?" asked a woman named Helen, who owned a large operation 3 miles down the road. "I have not decided yet," Carter replied. "Well, I hope you do. Edmund was a good friend and a good neighbor. We need people who understand that winemaking is not just a business, it is a calling." On the drive home, Olivia was quiet. "What is wrong?" Carter asked. "Nothing. You are a terrible liar." She sighed. "I just keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to announce you are selling. Every time someone asks if you are keeping the vineyard and you say you have not decided, I feel sick." Carter pulled the car over to the side of the road. They were surrounded by dark fields, stars brilliant overhead. "Olivia, look at me." She turned. In the dim light from the dashboard, her eyes were luminous. "I came back here for a month," Carter said carefully, "because I needed to know if this place was worth changing my entire life for. Do you understand what I am saying? I think so. I am not just trying to understand the business. I am trying to understand if I can build a life here, a real life. Can you? I do not know yet, but I am trying to figure it out. What would that life look like?" Carter reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were rough from work, strong and warm. "That depends on a lot of factors." "Like what?" "Like whether the vineyard manager would be willing to work with a co-owner who is still learning." Like whether I can successfully run my pharmaceutical company remotely most of the time. Like whether the most beautiful woman I have ever met might be interested in having dinner with me as more than just colleagues. Olivia's breath caught. Carter, I am falling for you, Olivia. I have been falling for you since the first day when you stood in that tasting room and told me this place was more than just property. I tried not to. I tried to keep it professional, but I cannot stop thinking about you. I think about you too, she whispered. All the time, but I am scared. Of what? Of this not being real. Of you deciding the vineyard is not worth it and leaving. Of getting my heart broken. Her voice shook. Edmund was like a father to me, and when he died, it nearly destroyed me. I cannot lose someone else I care about. Carter lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. I cannot promise I will never leave or that I will never hurt you, but I can promise I will try my hardest not to, and I can promise that what I feel for you is real. How do you know? Because I have never felt like this before. Like I would give up everything I have built just to see you smile. Like the idea of going back to New York without you makes me physically ill. Like I want to learn everything about wine just so I can talk to you about it for hours. Olivia made a sound between a laugh and a sob. That is the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me. Then let me kiss you, please. I have been wanting to for weeks. She nodded, and Carter cupped her face in his hands. He kissed her softly at first, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But instead, she leaned into him, her hands gripping his shirt as the kiss deepened. She tasted like the wine they had sampled at the meeting, rich and complex and perfect. Carter felt something click into place inside him, like finding a piece he had not known was missing. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Olivia rested her forehead against his. This is crazy, she murmured, completely. You live in New York, I live here. Your life is pharmaceutical companies and board meetings. It does not have to be. Carter, be realistic. You cannot just abandon your company. I am not planning to, but I can restructure. My CFO has been wanting more responsibility. My VP of operations is brilliant and underutilized. I built the company to run smoothly. It does not need me micromanaging every decision. What are you saying? Carter pulled back to look at her. I am saying I want to try, split my time between here and New York, build something new, keep the vineyard and run it with you, see where this thing between us goes. That is a huge life change. I know. But the thing is, Olivia, I have been successful by every measure. I have money, power, respect. And I have been miserable. These past few weeks here, even with all the uncertainty, I have been happier than I have been in years. That has to mean something. It means you were overworked and needed a vacation. It means I was living a life that was not really mine. I was following a path someone else laid out. My father built that company. I just inherited it, same as I inherited this vineyard. But this place with you feels like mine in a way the company never did. Olivia kissed him again, slower this time, sweeter. Stay, she whispered against his lips. Really stay, not just for a month. Stay and build this with me. Is that what you want, more than anything? They drove back to the vineyard with their hands linked across the center console. When they got to the cottage, Olivia did not go to her room and Carter did not go to his. Instead, they lay on the couch together, talking and kissing until the early hours of the morning, making plans and promises that felt both terrifying and inevitable. The next day, Carter started making calls to his board of directors, explaining he would be transitioning to a more remote role. To his executive team, delegating responsibilities and setting up new systems. To his assistant, instructing her to ship most of his belongings to California. You are really doing this, Olivia said, watching him work with a mixture of awe and disbelief. I really am. Are you having second thoughts? No, maybe, I do not know, it is just a lot. Carter closed his laptop and pulled her onto his lap. Talk to me. What if you change your mind? What if you get bored here after a few months? What if you resent me for being the reason you left your old life? Then we will deal with it, together. Olivia, I am not going into this blind. I know it is going to be hard. I know there will be adjustments and challenges. But I also know I want to try. Why? Why this place? Why me? Because you make me want to be better. Because when I am here, I feel like the version of myself I was always supposed to be. Because I look at you and think about forever, and that scares the hell out of me but also feels right. Olivia buried her face in his neck. I am falling in love with you, good, because I am already there. They told Miguel and David the next day. Both men broke into huge smiles. Edmund would be so happy, Miguel said. He always hoped you would come around. He talked about me, Carter asked, surprised, all the time. Said his nephew was brilliant but lost. Said he hoped someday you would find your way here and see what really mattered. Apparently, he knew me better than I thought. Over the next few weeks, Carter finalized his plans. He would keep his position as CEO but work remotely except for 1 week per month in New York. His executive team would handle day-to-day operations with his oversight. It was not a perfect solution, but it could work. Olivia introduced him to every aspect of winemaking he had not seen yet. They planned for the next year's harvest, decided which new varietals to experiment with, discussed marketing strategies and distribution deals. Carter brought his business acumen to the table while respecting Olivia's expertise on the wine itself. They were a good team. They were also completely head over heels in love. Carter had never been the romantic type, but with Olivia, he found himself doing things he would have mocked just months ago. Bringing her wildflowers from the property. Dancing with her in the tasting room to music from her phone. Leaving notes on her pillow when he had to fly to New York for meetings. Olivia softened him in ways he had not known he needed. She taught him to slow down, to appreciate moments instead of always racing toward the next goal. She also challenged him, refusing to let him bulldoze through decisions without considering all the angles. Their first real fight came in January, over expansion plans. We should buy the adjacent property, Carter argued. It is 10 acres with southern exposure. Perfect for expanding the Pinot Noir. We cannot afford it, Olivia countered. Not without taking on debt that could sink us if we have a bad harvest. The vineyard is profitable. We can handle some risk. You are thinking like a CEO with multiple revenue streams. I am thinking like someone who has seen wineries go under from overextending. We need to be conservative. Conservative does not build empires. I do not want an empire, Olivia's voice rose. I want Westridge to stay Westridge. Small, quality-focused, sustainable. The moment we start chasing growth for growth's sake, we lose what makes this place special. So you just want to stay exactly as we are forever. I want to grow smart, not fast. They glared at each other across Edmund's old desk. Then Carter saw the fear in Olivia's eyes and understood. She was not just fighting about business strategy. She was terrified of losing the place she loved. Okay, he said, his voice gentler. Explain to me why this is a bad idea. Really explain it like I am someone who does not know anything about wine. Olivia took a breath. Expanding means more land to maintain, more vines to manage, more grapes to process. We would need to hire more staff, buy more equipment, possibly build additional fermentation capacity. All of that costs money we do not have in reserve. If we take on debt and then have a bad year due to weather or disease or market conditions, we could lose everything. Edmund always said to only grow as fast as the land could support naturally. What if we did it in phases? Buy the land now while it is available, but only plant a few acres at a time as revenue allows, Olivia considered. That could work. It would take longer. I have learned patience from you. I can wait. She came around the desk and wrapped her arms around him. Thank you for listening. Thank you for keeping me from making a stupid mistake. They bought the land in February, with a 10-year plan for gradual expansion. It was a compromise they both could live with, and it set the tone for how they would make decisions together going forward. In March, Carter officially moved into the cottage with Olivia. They turned the guest room into his office, and he set up systems to run Newman Pharmaceuticals remotely. It was not always smooth. There were frustrating conference calls and times when he had to fly to New York on short notice. But it worked. More importantly, building a life with Olivia worked. She was affectionate and funny, passionate about her work, but also playful. She left her shoes everywhere and sang loudly to country music while she cooked. She fell asleep reading and woke up early to check the vineyard before coffee. Carter discovered he liked grocery shopping with her, liked the routine of their mornings, liked having someone to share every small victory and frustration with. He had thought he preferred his solitary life, but it turned out he had just been waiting for the right person. In April, they held their first event together as co-owners. A spring tasting weekend that brought in wine enthusiasts from all over the region. Olivia handled the wine presentations while Carter managed the business side, and they worked together seamlessly. You two are like magic together, Helen from the neighboring winery commented. Edmund would be so proud. That night, as they cleaned up after the last guests left, Carter found himself thinking about the future, really thinking about it for the first time. Marry me, he said suddenly. Olivia dropped the wine glass she was holding. It shattered on the floor. What? Carter knelt down, heedless of the broken glass. I do not have a ring. I did not plan this, but I do not want to wait. Olivia James, will you marry me? You cannot be serious. I am completely serious. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life building this place with you, arguing about expansion plans and making wine and growing old together. Marry me. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Yes, yes, of course yes. Carter stood and kissed her, both of them laughing as glass crunched under their feet. It was imperfect and impulsive and absolutely perfect. They got engaged without a ring, without fanfare, just the two of them in the tasting room at midnight, surrounded by the evidence of their successful day. It was completely them. Carter bought her a ring the next week, a custom piece with a golden diamond that matched the color of the vines at sunset. Olivia cried when he slipped it on her finger. It is perfect, she whispered. You are perfect. They married in September on the vineyard during harvest season. It was small and intimate, just family and close friends. Miguel walked Olivia down the aisle between rows of grape-heavy vines. David was Carter's best man. The ceremony was held at sunset, golden light bathing everything in warmth. Olivia wore a simple cream dress and had flowers from the property in her hair. Carter wore a suit but had dirt under his fingernails from working that morning. Neither of them would have had it any other way. Edmund would have loved this, Olivia said during their first dance. I think he planned it, Carter replied, leaving me this place, making sure you could not be forced out. He was matchmaking from beyond the grave. That sounds like him. Carter pulled her closer. I am glad he did. I cannot imagine my life without you now. Good thing you do not have to. They honeymooned in Napa Valley, touring other wineries and learning new techniques. It was busman's holiday, but they loved it. Every evening they returned to their hotel and made love like newlyweds, discovering each other in ways that still felt new despite months together. I am so happy, Olivia whispered one night, her head on Carter's chest. Sometimes I am scared I will wake up and this will all be a dream. It is real. We are real, and we are just getting started." Over the next year, they settled into married life. Carter found his rhythm between vineyard work and running his pharmaceutical company. Newman Pharmaceuticals continued to thrive under his remote leadership, and he realized his executive team was even better than he had given them credit for. Westridge Vineyards had its best year yet, winning several prestigious awards and expanding distribution to high-end restaurants across California. Olivia's talent and Carter's business savvy made them formidable partners, but the best part was not the professional success. It was the life they built together. Lazy Sunday mornings in bed, working side by side in the vineyard, hosting dinner parties for their neighbors, planning for a future that stretched out before them full of possibility. In their second year of marriage, Olivia got pregnant. It was not planned but deeply wanted once they knew. "A baby," Carter said, his hand on her still flat stomach. "We are having a baby. Are you happy?" "I am terrified and thrilled, mostly thrilled." Their daughter was born in May during a thunderstorm that broke a month-long dry spell. They named her Alina after Edmund. She had Carter's dark hair and Olivia's amber eyes, and from the moment she entered the world, she had both of them wrapped around her tiny finger. "She is perfect," Olivia said, exhausted but glowing in the hospital bed. Carter held his daughter carefully, marveling at how something so small could make him feel so much. "She is, just like her mother." Bringing Alina home to the vineyard felt right. Carter had worried about raising a child in such a rural place, but Olivia dismissed his concerns. "She will grow up surrounded by beauty and nature and people who love her. She will learn the value of hard work and the joy of creating something with your own hands." What could be better? She was right. Alina thrived. She slept through the sounds of harvest, was passed around by Miguel and David and Helen, and all the people who had become their extended family. She grew strong and healthy, her laugh echoing through the vineyard like music. When Alina was 6 months old, Carter officially stepped down as CEO of Newman Pharmaceuticals, transitioning to chairman of the board. It was time. The company was in good hands, and he wanted to be fully present for his daughter's childhood in a way his own father had never been for him. "Are you sure?" Olivia asked. "I do not want you to have regrets." "I am sure. I helped build that company and I am proud of it, but this is where I want to be. With you and Alina, building our life here." They stood on the hill where Olivia had brought Carter that first dawn, watching the sun set over the vineyard. Alina slept in a carrier against Carter's chest. Olivia leaned against his side, her hand finding his. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For staying. For taking a chance on this place, on me. Thank you for showing me what really matters, for loving me enough to let me figure it out." "Do you ever miss New York?" Carter considered. "Sometimes I miss the energy, the pace, but I do not miss the life I had there, that person I was." He was successful but empty. "And now I am full, happy, home." Olivia tilted her face up to kiss him as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and rose. Alina stirred against Carter's chest, then settled back to sleep. In the vineyard below, the vines grew heavy with fruit, another harvest approaching. This was legacy, Carter thought. Not buildings or bank accounts or corporate empires, but this. Land tended with love. Work that mattered. A family built on choice and commitment. A home that welcomed everyone who entered. Edmund had known, had seen in Carter the potential for something more than quarterly profits and market shares, had given him the gift of this place and through it the gift of Olivia. "I wish I could have thanked him," Carter said. "Your uncle. For leaving me the vineyard." "He knows," Olivia replied. "Wherever he is, he knows, and he is happy." They walked back down the hill as twilight deepened, toward the cottage where lights glowed warm in the windows. toward dinner and bath time and all the ordinary moments that made a life. Toward the future they were building together, one day and one season and one harvest at a time. It was not the life Carter had planned. It was so much better. Years later, when Alina was old enough to understand, Carter would tell her the story. How he had almost sold this place, almost walked away from the greatest gift he had ever been given. How her mother had fought to save it and, in the process, had saved him too. He would tell her that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you do not plan for. The ones that sneak up and change everything when you are not looking. He would tell her that love is like wine. It takes time and patience and care. It needs the right conditions to grow. But when you get it right, when all the elements come together in perfect balance, the result is something complex and beautiful and absolutely worth the wait. But tonight, with Olivia beside him and Alina sleeping peacefully, Carter did not think about future conversations. He simply lived in the moment, grateful beyond measure for the unexpected turns that had brought him here, to Westridge Vineyards, to Olivia, to home. The vineyard stretched around them in the gathering dark, vines rustling softly in the evening breeze. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. The air smelled of earth and growing things, of wine aging in barrels and bread baking in the cottage oven. This was where he belonged. This was who he was meant to be, not the CEO who lived for the next deal, not the driven executive who sacrificed everything for success, but a man who had found his purpose in soil and sunshine, a husband who had discovered that partnership was more valuable than power, a father who would teach his daughter that the most important things in life could not be measured in dollars or achievements. A man who had inherited a winery and, in the process, had inherited himself. Carter Newman had come to Meadowbrook expecting to make a business decision. Instead, he had found a life. He had found love. He had found that the tiny town, the stubborn woman, and the land his grandfather had cultivated all those years ago were exactly what he had been searching for without knowing it, and he had fallen hard, for all of it. But especially for Olivia, who had refused to leave and, in doing so, had given him every reason to stay.